It has 4 parts. Those are the major ones that usually emphasize when you come into enforcing. We have preliminaries, general duties, administration, enforcement, registration of workplaces, health provisions, machinery safety, safety general provisions, chemical safety, welfare general provisions, health and safety welfare special provisions. We have special applications, offense penalties, and legal proceedings, and we have miscellaneous provisions. And then we'll talk about the general duties of an employer. The employer is supposed to come up with a safety and health policy statement. This is a commitment as an employer when it comes to matters of safety and health and welfare of a worker in the workplace. It is the top management or the executive that is supposed to send that document. And then we have safety and health audits annually. These audits, what are the mitigation measures that the employer has put in place? What are the gaps that are there when it comes to matters of safety and health and welfare of a worker? We have OSH audits, fire audits, and risk assessment. Those are done annually, and it is in accordance with Section 6, 11, and 36 as per reduction. As per fire risk reduction rules. And then it is the duty of an employer on reporting the accidents, diseases, and dangerous occurrence to the occupational safety and health officer of that area. If it is fatal, it's supposed to be notified to our offices within 24 hours. The employer also can call the officer, hata kama ni on a Sunday or on a Saturday, within 24 hours. You are supposed to be having the contacts of your area officer. If it is non-fatal, within 7 days, it's supposed to have been reported. And then it is mandatory for an occupier or an employer to come up with the OSH committee. This OSH committee members, they're supposed to be representative from the management and also from the workers. And then the employee is supposed to take plans of approval for a proposed workplace and then register a workplace under the Act. If it is a new registration, as per the Act, is 6,500. For renewal, it is 5,000. In accordance with section 43 to 46 of the OSHA Act. And then the employee is supposed to carry out medical examination. Is supposed to carry out medical examination to their employees. An example, an employee is supposed to do a pre-medical examination, periodic medical examination, and post-medical examination. What is pre-medical examination entails? For example, tuseme huyu mfanyikazi amekuja kufanyia kampuni A kazi na ametoka kufanya kazi kwa kampuni B na alitoka kwa kampuni B, an example, kama amepata, as he has contracted an occupational disease and he has also an underlying condition, and you don't know so much about this or the history concerning the health of that worker. So it's very important to do a pre-medical examination. And then periodic medical examination, this one happens mostly to the workers that are exposed to hazards that they can contract diseases. Let's say wale sana sana wanafanya kwa flower farms. There's some periodic medical examination they're supposed to be done. Even the ones in what wanafanya kwa water company, it's also important to do periodic medical examination. And then post-medical examination later comes in. For an example, tuseme mfanyikazi ametoka kampuni A, ameresign na nataka kuenda kwa kampuni ingine. It is very important for an employer to do a post medical examination ili asikuja let alone aseme alipata hii ugonjwa akifanyia kampuni A. Ndio sasa akitoka atoke kama faili yake iko salama. So it is very important to do pre-medical examination, periodic medical examination, and post-periodic medical examination. If you contravene the laws as how the law stipulates, there is a penalty. You can get more than 500,000 or 6 months imprisonment. And then discrimination. Employer should not discriminate an employee because an employee has complained of unsafe condition of work. Employee is a member of a safety committee, exercise duty of safety committee. And then we have the duty of employees' duties also. Shall all times wear and use appropriate PPE provided by the employer to comply with safe work procedures given by a person having authority over him. Report to the supervisor any hazardous situation. This one is very important. And then we have to report any occupational accidents arising in his course of work. And then duty not to engage in any improper behavior at workplace, e.g. fighting and unnecessary running. And then duty not to interfere or misuse any appliance provided in the interest of the safety. As an OSH officer, we have also the responsibilities. Administration. The director of DOSHES is responsible for administration of the Act. Director to issue certificates of approval to competent persons, e.g. examination and testings of plants. Examples of plants that are like steam boilers, air receivers, air compressors, the cranes. They're supposed to be also inspected periodically, and then medical examination. It is the director who usually approved. There are some people who have been approved to do this medical examination to the workers. They are called designated health practitioners. And then safety and health audits or advisors, auditors or advisors. These are people that have been approved to be doing audits in workplaces that have been approved. Safety and health training institutions. There are also people that have been approved, the institutions, to be doing it privately. And then enforcement.
I think our facilitator is having an internet problem before. Just wait so that she can reconnect.
Sorry for that. Health provisions, cleanliness, removal of dirt and refuse daily, washing and petting, overcrowding, minimum space, it will be 10 cubic meters per person, and then the workroom to be not less than 3 meters. And then ventilation, we usually check at the circulation of air in each room. Lighting is suitable, lighting whether natural or artificial. And then sanitary facilities. Efficient, separate for each. For when we usually do an inspection, usually when it is what they look at the, and then when it comes to sanitary conveniences, unaweza pata males and females, they're sharing the same sanitary facilities. So they're supposed to be labeled and also separate. And then we have machinery safety. Moving parts of prime movers to be securely fenced. We have transmissions. We have transmission machinery to be securely fenced. And then efficient starting and stopping appliances for every machine. That one is very important. And then every dangerous part of any machine should be securely fenced. This is an example of moving parts of a machine. You can see like this person, you can see that it has been entangled. So it is very important when you're going to work, you are not supposed to be having loose garments. You're supposed to have the proper PPEs so that to avoid accidents. This is an example of a machine that has been guarded. You can see this is a machine also that has been fenced. And then you have plants to be thoroughly examined by approved persons periodically. And then reports of examination to be kept in a prescribed form. An example like hoist and lifts, they're supposed to be examined or inspected after 6 months. Steam boilers once in 12 months. This is an example of tower crane. You can see it. And then it's scheduled for examination at least once in 12 months. And then you have air compressors. Examination at least once in 24 months. It's very, very important for them to be inspected by approved people. And then you have safety general provisions. Highly flammable substances to be kept either in a fire-resistant store or in a safe place outside any occupied building. Exit door to open wide or outwards or side in one direction. Exit door to be marked in red. And then fire extinguishers to be suitable and adequate. The fire extinguishers, let me emphasize on them. You are supposed to know the class of fire that you're supposed to be handling. How is the selection? How is the distribution of those fire extinguishers? It's very important. And also the color code. You're supposed to know the color code of those fire extinguishers. And then the emergency evacuation procedures to be designed. Let me emphasize on fire exit door to open outward. This one is very important. You can imagine during the time for stampede. Sana accident ama watu wanaumia ama fatal accident usually occurs when the door is opening from inwards. So it's very important the doors to be opening from outwards or to be sliding on one side. That one is very important. And then you have chemical safety. Material safety data sheet. Material safety data sheet. This is like a leaflet that usually have information concerning the chemicals. It usually gives us the safety precautions, emergency procedures they're supposed to follow in case it becomes so hazardous to the contact person. And then it's supposed to be labeled and marked well. And then it's supposed to be also having to tell much about the characteristics, the properties of the chemicals, and also the classification of the hazardous chemicals and substances, e.g. their toxicity, corrosiveness, allergenic, carcinogenic, teratogenic, and mutagenic. The deployment of workers if medical practitioner recommends. redeployment of workers, what usually happens in an example where a worker has been exposed to air pollution, vibrations, or in an area that is it will adversely affect their well-being. So a medical a medical practitioner can recommend that this person can be deployed in another area. That's when you look at this, that one is in accordance with Section 90 of the Act. And then we have fair provisions like wholesome drinking water at suitable points. That one is very important. And then accommodation for clothes not worn during the working hours. And then sitting facility for employee whose work is for standing most of the time. And then first aid facilities. These first aid kits, they're supposed to be well stocked and also to be strategically placed where it can be accessible to any worker. And then at that first aid, you're supposed to be having people that have been trained on first aid and also the contact person of that person who can be able to do first aid to a worker. And then we have permit to work. A permit to work system means a written notice set out to the work to be done, the hazard involved, and the precaution to be taken before the work commences in order to secure the safety and health of the employee. The worker have to sign a permit to work, that is an authorized form, countersigned by the supervisor, manager in charge, confirming that all laid downward precautions have been taken. An example of area where a permit to work may be required: working in a confined or closed vessels, e.g. reaction vessels, boilers, docks, and also the people who usually work with storage and water companies. And then working at a high electric voltage cables, you're supposed to give a permit to work. And then work involving ionizing radiation and working at height. Later on, I'll show you an example of a permit to work, a sample of it. And then we have miscellaneous provisions. Miscellaneous provisions, that is a small part of the Act. It usually emphasizes on posting of an abstract chart in every workplace and keeping the general register. This general register, the minute you register the workplace, you'll be given an abstract chart and general register. These general registers will usually record any occupational accident or contraction of occupational diseases, and also if the one who has been injured has been compensated. And then we have other subsidiary legislations as per the Act. We have factory, that is woodworking machinery rules, and then factory, that is dock rules. We have cellulose solution rules. We have first aid rule. We have protection of the eye rules. We have building operation and work of engineering. And then you have factory other places of work, that is safety and health committee rules. This one is the one usually emphasized that an organization or a company that has more than 20 employees, they're supposed to come up with the OSH committee. An OSH committee is supposed to have representatives from the management and from the employees. These OSH committee members, they're the ones who are supposed to be doing an internal inspection and then to give recommendation to the employer or the occupier. That one is very, very important. And then they're supposed to be trained. They usually train the OSH committee members. It is a 4-day training. It usually have many topics. We have like OSHA Act, WIBA Act, occupational accident, occupational diseases, HIV at the workplace, chemical safety, machinery safety. We usually have electrical safety. Those are the major topics usually in the OSH committee training. And then when you are trained, you are supposed to be given certificates certificates, they're supposed to be given those certificates. When I come as a OSH officer, nikuja naambia the employer or the representative of the employer, nataka kuona kama your OSH committee members have been trained. Obviously, I have to, if they have certificates and if they've been trained by approved institutions or is it from doshes. And then we have factory and other places of work, that is noise prevention and control. We have factory and other places of work, that is medical examination. Remember that I emphasize on periodic and post-medical examinations. And then you have factory and other places of work, that is fire risk reduction rules. This one, the one we usually emphasize also when it comes to fire audits. And then you have factory and other places of work, that is hazardous substances. Remember, I emphasize on chemical safety. You will get so much on matters of chemical safety at that subsidiary legislation. Allow me to take you through about the formation organization of OSH committee. This one is very, very important because at the end of the day, the OSH committee members, they're supposed to be ambassadors on matters of safety and health at the workplace. And this one will enable us to reduce the accidents that usually occur at the workplace. A committee to be formed in all workplaces, regularly employ with the people who have more than 20 employees. For people who have less than 20 employees, usually emphasize on OSHA awareness. Those are like a one-day training. The committee to have equal representation from the management and from the workers. Management side to include the occupier or his appointed representative, and then workers' representative to be elected by the worker and to reflect the gender and departmental balances. The committee life is 3 years. Former members are eligible for re-election and reappointment for a further 1 term. And then the constitution, if you have more than 20 employees to 100 there, the committee is supposed to have at least 6 members from the management, 3 from the management and 3 from the workers. If you have 100 to 1,000 employees, 10 members, at least 10 members. And then over 1,000 employees, that is at least 14 members. And then meetings, committee to meet not less than 4 times a year and not more than 3 months shall elapse between the date of one meeting and the next meeting. Remember that meeting is supposed to have a chairman and also a secretary. The chairman can convene an urgent meeting within 24 hours in case of an accident, dangerous occurrence, or sudden outbreak of an illness. And then the function of the OSH committees. Remember the OSH committee members, you're supposed to do an inspection. That is an internal inspection at that workplace. Inspection to identify occupational hazards, investigation of accidents, dangerous occurrence, and near misses. Because at the end of the day, you are the one who are supposed to be giving recommendation to the employers. And then investigate health and safety complaints. That one is very important. And then compile statistics of accidents, dangerous occurrence, cases of ill health as primary data for providing remedial measures, planning and allocation of resources. This one is very, very important when planning of statistics. Remember, we have the backup of general register. That is where it comes in also. And then conduct seminars and workers' education programs. That one is also on OSHA awareness. You can be calling even the DOSH representative to be coming and do OSHA awareness with companies. And maybe for a certain topics, let's say people don't know so much about how on WIBA, Let's say stress management at the workplace. You get fire safety is very important. I usually emphasize like not OSH committee members to be trained only for fire, but let each and every person to know much about fire safety and also first aid. And then minutes of the above meeting should be conveyed to the director and doshes within 7 days from the date of the meeting. And then the role of the members. You are supposed to be attending the meeting without fail. And then provide input. Remember, you are supposed to be having so much knowledge and information on matters of safety and health. Your contribution will matter a lot in that institution or that organization or that company. And then provide feedback to their representative department. That one is very important. Remember that emphasize that you are the ambassadors. The people that have not been trained may be looking up to you. For guidance on matters of safety and health, and then set good examples in safety and health practices. Remember, you're ambassador, yeah? And then monitor health and safety compliance in their department. Remember, we have laws and rules that's supposed to be adhere to. That one is very important. And then participate in training of other workers. Yeah, it's very important. The information that you've been given, you're supposed to disseminate that information to other workers. And then promote safety and health. Yes, ukiingia kazini unafikiria safety and health. Remember that person ule ana deal na that machine. Remember each every now and then. It's like you are doing a refresher to that person. Ndio kila saa huyu mtu asitoke kazi nyumbani akuwa na stress zake na naenda kuhandle a machine. Hiyo machine itapita na yeye. And that's an accident. And then provide written safety and health recommendation following inspection carried out. That is matters of safety and health. And then also with OSHA. So far, so good. Any question? We've handled OSHA Act and also OSHA committee rule.
A few questions from P. Omolo, and I think two of your questions have already been answered on how many members should be in a committee and the mandatory trainings for the committee members. I think I will ask our facilitator to explain to us what is the occupation.
No disease. These are diseases. These are diseases that usually contract in cause of the work that you are doing at that workplace. For example, tuseme kama unaona watu wanafanya hospitalini. TB is an occupational disease. The people that are working at the flower farms wanapatanga mostly asthma. That's an occupational disease also. It generally is a disease that you can contract with what usually with the hazard that you're exposed to. In accordance with the work that you are doing.
So the next question we had P. Omoro asked how to get contact for people in your area. I think this one you will say the area you are in, and then she can try to connect you. We also have another question from Leah. She's asking, what happens if you have less than 20 employees for OSHA committees?
Okay, if you have less than 20 employees, what we usually emphasize, let them be trained on OSH awareness. If you mind so much about your employees for the sake of their productivity and their well-being, sana sana hao wafanyikazi wamekuja kukufanyia kazi at that workplace. Kumbuka unaangalia the productivity that you will get from that and the profit also. But if you are willing, as how the law stipulates, if you have more than 20 employees, it is mandatory you're supposed to have a OSH committee member and they be trained. But if you have less than, this is your well-being, huh? Ni venye utajitolea, because remember, hata ukifanya kwa hii kazi unataka profit, na ukijali maslahi ya mfanyikazi akiwa kazini, you get good returns. But we usually emphasize, let them to be trained on OSH awareness. It's a one-day training. We can come up with so many topics on matters of safety and health. It depends the way you want. But for more than 20 employees, hiyo ni lazima. And I can take you to court for that if you don't train your employees and on matters of safety and health, and you don't have a OSH committee. Yes.
So members, kindly remember to sign. The notes will be shared using the email address that you have registered with. So I think for now, we have another question from Kezia. Do you have checklists to use when undertaking internal audits by the OSHA committees?
About checklist, occupational safety and health checklist, what I usually emphasize, if you don't know how to come up with that OSH checklist, usually coming to assist the employer or the occupier or the institution so that they can be able to do an internal inspection. Thank you.
So I think we can continue to the next, the Occupational Benefits Act of 2007.
Work Injury Benefit Act. I love this act sababu tunajali maslahi ya mfanyikazi akiwa kazini. And there is a gap. Let's say in our county when it comes to matters of safety and health, and also in compensation, the procedure that's supposed to follow, you're supposed to know. Are you supposed to be compensated when you are out of work? Upate accident kama uko on leave. Umetumwa na employer ende unifanyie 1, 2, 3 town. Upate an accident na uko hapa kazini. Are you supposed to be compensated? Who are the dependents? I believe I have men here. If you have another woman, umemficha na tuseme amepata mimba na umeenda. Will the baby and she be a dependent? Sheria inasema aje? Yes, let's start. Work Injury Benefit Act. It's an act of parliament, provides for compensation of work-related injuries and diseases. The date of commencement, it was on 2nd June 208, it repealed the Workman Compensation Act, Cap 236, laws of Kenya. And then application, the act applies to all employees, including employees employed by the government, other than armed forces, in the same way and to the same extent as if the government were a private employer. Why are they saying other than the armed forces? Najua wao ndio wanalindanga serikali na nchi yetu. So we are not supposed to know so much about them. Una imagine amepata an accident, an armed officer amepata an accident. Alafu tuseme amepelekwa Madari. Na unakumbuka Al-Shabaab anaweza pata access to Madari Hospital. Security ya huyo officer, it's at stake. That's why they have their own system, so that we don't end up knowing so much about them. That's why, other than armed forces. And then, meaning of an employer. An employer is a person who employs an employee and includes the legal person, representative of deceased employer. I can be an employer. Kama siko, let's say nilisamani mtoto wangu, he will be a representative of me as an employer to my company. So he is an employer. Or any other person controlling the business of an employer. Even the HR, you're the representative of the employer. And then employer also includes the trustee of a club or association of person, e.g. IHRM, KMPD, yes, and also the government. The government also is an employer. Meaning of an employer, of an employee, sorry. An employee is a person who has been employed for wage or salary under contract of service and includes apprentice. Subsection 1 applies irrespective of whether the contract is expressed or implied, or is oral or in writing, and whether the remuneration is calculated by time or by work done, and whether by day, week, month, or any longer period, whether the payment is in cash or recognized legal tender. The contract is expressed. It can be in writing. You come up in an agreement, utakuwa ukinilipa hii as per this, or implied. An example, unaona ukienda Mombasa, that these people wanataka ku-offload matrela wako na hizi masimiti. And then the owner of that trailer anajifanya anasoma gazeti, anaangalia kimacho kuona kama hawa vijana wananga kazi, wanagoja tu kazi katokelezea, wakimbilia lori wa offload ndo wapeweka kitu. The minute hiyo simiti imemwangushia na amecollapse akiwa hapo, he is entitled to compensation. That's the meaning of implied. That one is very, very important. He's supposed to be compensated. Tuseme amekufia tu hapo akimjaribu kumbebea mzigo yake, sisi tunafuatilia. He's supposed to be compensated. And then tunasema hapa kwa apprentice ama for example, tuko na interns wanakujanga kutufanyia kazi. tuseme ameumia akiwa kazini. Na amepata permanent incapacity. Later on in my slides, we'll look at how the calculation is done. You see, this in turn atalipwa kulingana na, unaona, the person, the entry level, the entry level of that person kwa hiyo position yake, who has done for that company for 5 years. We'll use it as a gross salary to calculate. You get, huh? And also it's very important, an employer to have a WIBA insurance for these people, because it is very, very important. And also the law it has stipulated that the insurer, the employer is supposed to come up with the WIBA insurance. And then the right to compensation. An employee who sustained an occupational accident that arose out of or in course of employment, he's entitled to compensation. What is arose out of? Inamaanisha nini? Tuseme in my office I have a clerk. Kazi yake ni kufanya kwa ofisi. Lakini kwa harakati zake za kazi ameumia. He's entitled to compensation. In course of in the course of an employment. Inamaanisha nini? Tulisema clerk kazi yake sana sana ni ya ofisi. Alafu nimwambie tafadhali enda town unifanyie 1 2 3 uniletee parcel. Kwa hiyo harakati apate an accident. Sunaona alifanya kazi ile ifai kuwa ni yake. So that is in course of the employment. So he is entitled to compensation. An employee who contracts an occupational disease, yes, that one you are also entitled to a compensation. As per the first schedule of WIBA, you'll get it there, even how there's a percentage that's supposed to be given out. And then for something done in the best interest of an employer, what does it mean? Tuseme mfanyikazi, you know, they are wafanyikazi wazuri, they have a good heart. Alikuwa nje ya gate, anaona kampuni yao ndo ile inachomeka, naye akimbie asaidie kuzima moto. Kwa hiyo harakati, God forbid, aumie akiwa hapo ama akufe akiwa hapo. You see, he did something in the best interest of the employer. And then commuting in a vehicle provided by the employer. What does it mean? Kuna kampuni mingi zinakuanga na their own vehicles. Iyo vehicle ipate accident, you are entitled to compensation because it is the employer who provided the vehicle. Or ata EPSV. Tuseme I'm an employer, nataka kupeleka wafanyikazi wangu a team building in a hotel, maybe Naivasha, iko Naivasha. Kwa that PSV imeanguka and my people wamepata an accident, they've been injured, they're entitled to compensation. And then employee deployed outside Kenya. What does it mean? An employee who is entitled to this compensation is somebody who have been outside Kenya within 12 months and a foreigner deployed in Kenya. If this foreigner has been deployed in Kenya and has stayed in Kenya in more than 12 months, that one is entitled to compensation. Watatumia sheria yetu. Even for this person within 12 months that has been deployed outside Kenya, tutatumia sheria yetu for the sake of his compensation. And then dependents. Who are the dependents? Tuseme it was a fatal accident, hauko. Sasa hii pesa ya compensation nani anafaa kupewa? One, we have widows. Unaona iko na brackets. Huh? They say men they are polygamous. Ndio kwa maana kuna bracket ya S hapo. Hata hao watapata haki yao. And then or widower. Mbona wakuweka widowers hata bracket? Hiyo ni swali nimeuliza, mutaniambia nyinyi sasa. And then a child, stepchild or adopted child is entitled to compensation. And then parent, step-parent, foster parent, a child of an employee not contemplated by bullet 2. This one, tuseme umeoa na uko na mpango wa kando. And you've been staying with this lady for more than 6 months. Kisheria inasema huo ni wako. Na tuseme alipata mimba kwa hiyo harakati yenu. Na ulienda. Na ajitokeleze. Siku hizi tunaweza jua huu mtoto alikuwa wa Kamau. And there are many ways how to prove it. This child is entitled to compensation. Brother, sister, half brother, half sister, grandparent, grandchild. They're entitled to compensation. They're like dependent. And then any other person who was a dependent, ule alikuwa anakutegemea by then, they're entitled to get that compensation money. And then dependents, where the dependents, let's say a widow, remarries before compensation is paid. Her marital status does not disentitle her from compensation. We are together? Mimi, God forbid, bwanangu alikufa. Na alikufa na sasa nafaa nipate that money. By the way, the process for compensation, it usually takes 90 days so that I can get that money. Yeah? And these 90 days, those 90 days, and then there is usually some hiccups here and there. Kunakuwa na a little bit of delay so that I get the compensation money. So what happens, I can end up getting married again. Na hiyo pesa haikutoka na ilikawia kabla itoke. It doesn't mean my marital status I'm not entitled to compensation. And then religion and custom does not prevail over the provision of the act, for instance, where the deceased brother assumes, this is an example, assumes responsibility for the widow or the children. He is not thereby considered a dependent. The position at the time of death is completely overriding in this respect, and the widow is rightfully dependent for the purposes of this act. What does it mean? Ile wakati an accident occurred mumangu akaaga. That time I was a dependent. It doesn't mean sasa nimepata maybe the deceased brother. Let's say like you can see like laws. They usually say that you can inherit the wife of the deceased. Huh? It doesn't mean even him also he's a dependent. So you can see that it's overriding the position of the at the time of death is completely overriding in this respect. The widow is rightfully dependent for the purposes of the act. So inamaanisha usually check the time of death, who are the dependents. If you later on uende uoleke ukuje na watoto wengine nini, no. We usually look at the time of accident. Ni akina nani walikuwa nakutegemea. Ukikuja na watu wengine later on, we don't usually consider that. That's why we usually involve the DCCC to give us the rightful dependence. And then we usually, we have another, this slide, we have contentious clauses kwa WIBA. Like let's say, Section 7, employer's obligation and insurance. Remember, I said the employer is supposed to insure their employees in Section 7. Section 7, it had some issues with the LSK. So, Section 7, what does it say? It compels an employer to obtain and maintain an insurance policy from insurer approved by the minister. This section ilituma LSK wakimbie kotini. Why? Because the minister by then, he was really emphasizing that you're supposed to take insurance policy with specific insurance company. And that one, it was depriving the employer freedom to take out insurance policy for their employees with any licensed insurance company of their choice. It was contradicting Section 80 of the former constitution. Of the former constitutional. And then what does it? The High Court judge section declared null and void by the High Court. The High Court decision was upheld. The government cannot dictate to employers from which insurance they must take up the policy. We have insurance regulatory authority that regulates insurance company. Neza kuwa hii ilikuwa inaonyesha ni kama there is a conflict of interest, sababu I'm a minister or I'm a CS. Alafu niseme all institutions, all employers, all companies, they're supposed to take with their specific insurance company. Maybe that company, insurance company is mine. That's why it had a gap there. And then you have Section 10. Section 10, hata hii ilikuwa na tashwishi. Section 10, subsection 4, imposes liability on the employer, regardless of who was to blame of an injury, disease, or death suffered in work-related circumstances. LSK, in their petition of 185 of 202, argued this section eliminates the constitutional right for any form of defense that the employer may have had. Okay. For the section of the act, it creates liability of the part of the, it creates a liability on the part of the employer without fault, even when the employee is demonstrated to be at fault. And this section purports to deprive the employer of its constitutional right to raise defense that the incidents rose from an employee criminal action, negligence, or from any authorized activity, that it violates the employer entitlement to fair trial in accordance with Section 7 of the former Constitution. So walikuwa nasema hivi, ati tuseme an employee ameenda akashika machine A na akapata an accident without the authority of an employer, and is claiming that he's supposed to be compensated. And maybe natasema alipatiwa accident in course of work, out of work. You get, huh? So what happens? The LSK saw there was a gap whereby it deprived the employer entitlement to fair trial in accordance with Section 77 of the former Constitution. Mimi kama employer, uwezi niambia ni compensate mfanyikazi ule anataka to gain from his own illegal, immoral, or criminal conduct without my authority. So meaning mimi naenda hasara. And it was against the Constitution, Section 77. The Court of Appeal judgment offends the principle of ex turpi causa non turio action. This one, what it means is one cannot be expected to gain from his own illegal, immoral, or criminal conduct. And this decision of this verdict, it was under the bench. It was on the bench were the Waki, Makandia, and Ouko. By then they were the judges, and they're the ones who came with this verdict. The Court of Appeal, the experts, if an employee, this is a further explanation, if an employee is injured through willful misconduct or against the direction of the employer, or in the course of committing a criminal act, the employer cannot be held liable and should be free to raise defense of illegality or contributory negligence. You get, huh? No court will lend its aid to a man who founds his course of action upon, an immoral or an illegal act. You are together? And then we go to compensation, how we are supposed to calculate. How are we supposed to do the calculation? Compensation of permanent incapacity shall be calculated on the basis of 96 months earning. What is permanent incapacity? Permanent incapacity is when you lose a function, loss of body part, or the functionality of an organ of the body. And then you have temporary capacity. Temporary capacity, what it means ni uvunjike mguu, alafu ukae nyumbani, let's say 3 months, urudi sawa, ama umekatwa. That is temporary capacity. And then we have partial temporary capacity. Hiyo ni kama ukatwe tu kidogo, and then first aid imefanyika kwako, and then urudi kazini. Now let's go back to how we are supposed to calculate. For permanent incapacity, as per the first schedule of WIBA, utaona zile percentage mtu anafaa kuangalia. Remember, when I said their DHPs. This designated medical health practitioner, they usually also assist in this. First of all, when you are doing the compensation of permanent incapacity, first, there's supposed to be a WIBA, a Doshuan form that you may fill down. This one is supposed to be a notification from the employer, and then analeta kwa ofisi yetu. After that, there's part 2, where daktari anafaa kuandika the percentage kulingana na venye umeumia, na ataangalia the first schedule of WIBA, ndio itamguide which percentage anafaa kukupatia. You are together? Hapo atachukua hiyo percentage times the salary, ile salary ulikuwa unalipwa wakati ya accident ilifanyika, times 96 months. Why 96? The law stipulates this, it's supposed to be 96. We usually look also other stakeholders so that they can come with this 96. Other stakeholders pia sat down, they come up with the conclusion that is fair for the insurance also. And also we usually also we benchmarked from other countries. That's why we came up with this 96 also. And then we have temporary capacity. Temporary capacity, numbers of days of work, out of work, and then times salary divided by 26 days in a month. This one usually happens na watu casuals. As the law stipulates, it's supposed to be 4 and a third weeks. You multiply times 6 working days, you'll get this 26. Hapo ndo likujia. And then for permanent people, we usually use 30 days upon this formula. I hope you are together. And then the next slides. The next slide. Claim for compensation. Claim for compensation should be lodged within 12 months. What does it mean? Una mfanyikazi apate accident, alafu anyamaze, akuje tuseme hiyo accident ilifanyika last year, akuje asema oh niliumia now this year, he's not entitled to compensation. And then a claim lodged by the director with an employer or insurer should be settled within 90 days. From the time we calculated for you Doshwiba 4 and you gave you so that you take it to your insurer, that compensation is supposed to be settled within 90 days. You're together up to there. And then a right to benefit shall elapse if an accident is not reported to an employer within 12 months after the date of an accident, as the way I explained the first point. And then medical aid, employer to provide and maintain first aid facilities. Yes. Hapa ni lazima an employer to provide first aid facilities. And people that are supposed to be trained on first aid, the contact of first aid to be there. And then employer to defray all expenses reasonably incurred by an employee. What does it mean? Ile pesa mfanyikazi alitumia, tuseme ni transport, medical expenses, ndo ashughulikie the accident or injury alipata. ama occupational disease, unafaa urudishie mfanyikazi hiyo pesa, because it is the responsibility for an employer to defray all expenses reasonably incurred by an employee. Remember also duties of an employer, pali nilisema it is the duty of an employer on medical examination. Yes, wewe ndio utasimamia pre-medical examination, periodic medical examination and post-periodic medical examination. Hii itakusaidia sana kabisa kabisa kabisa. And then administration of the act. The Director of Work Injury Benefit Act is the administrator of the act. In our department, we have a director who usually ensure that there is implementation of this WIBA. The director should register employers, supervise the implementation of the act, ensure all employers ensure the employees. Remember, section 7 palilikuwa na emphasize lazima the employer to make sure the employees have been ensured. On this one, it will save you so much, because if you take a WIBA insurance and you are paying premiums, it will be safe for you. Kama uja ensured your employees, itabidi uingie kwa mfuko, and that one it will be quite expensive for an employer. Receive reports of accident and carry out investigation. When an accident have occurred at the workplace, we usually go and do investigations. Tujue ni nini ilifanyika. You get? Even when you're trying to do conflict mediation between employer and employee when it comes to compensation. And then uninsured injury and ensure injured employees are compensated. This is the work of the administrator. At the end of the day or month, we usually send reports to our directors on matters of WIBA compensations. Yeah. And then challenges that we go through, conflicting awards by the doctor. Yes, unaweza pata huyu mfanyikazi ile percentage alipewa bado jamfurahisha, but there is a door. You can go to our DOSH's offices in headquarters, and they will create a board where their doctors will award you, and what they give is usually the final say. And then tracing of dependents. You can imagine the Chinese wanakuja huku alafu kutrace their dependents. You remember with their right to compensation, pia the foreigners they are entitled to compensation. To trace their dependents inakuwa ngumu sana. And then delayed healing. Yes, kudelay healing pia inaleta shida hapo when it comes to compensation. And then inadequate compensation, unaweza pata employee anasema ile blood lose, it was a lot, so he needs also compensation for the loss of blood. And then violent claimant, there are some people who usually come to claim their compensation. They're so violent, even when you try to explain to them the right way why you are given this percentage, anaona zile mashida zote amepitia, he needs an extra compensation. And then fraud, unaona watu wanakuja na fake medical bills, alternation of percentage, unaona mtu alipewa 1% aongezee ikuwe 16%. You get? And then incomplete DOSH1. You cannot be compensated when you come up with the incomplete DOSH1. Yes. And that's it for today. Thanks for the opportunity. If there is any question, 1 or 2 questions, so that now we can wind up. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Margaret, for taking us through the session. I know the session has been enlightening and it will be of impact to us as HR practitioners in our line of work. So we have a question from Esther, who is asking the location of the offices in Nyeri.
Our offices are in County Regional Commissioners, Block B, Ground 4. When you come to room number 6, you'll get me there. Okay. In such a scenario, remember that we said maybe what happened ndio mtu apewe percentage at DOSH 1 part 2. Lazima kwanza kuwa ameheal so that the attending doctor can know the percentage he or she is supposed to be given. You get, huh? But as for now, if it has been closed, he can come to our offices for further guidance, and then we know how we can go about it. But it was closed. I have to seek further advice for my seniors because the case was closed and he was already compensated.
So the case was closed and paid, but rarely occurs.
In such a scenario, if it was closed and it has already occurred and paid, I think that one I have to seek further guidance from my seniors. I see how we can go about it. What kind of disease or accidents? Kindly give me details.
So if there are no further questions, I think we can end our session here. And the notes will be shared with you after this session using the email address that you have registered with. I hope each and every one of us has registered. If not yet registered, I will share the link again for you. Yes, please.
My question is, what about, that is DOSH 1 Form 2. What about if the doctor has said it's not applicable, the compensation, it's not applicable? So what happens? Does it mean that the person, the staff will not be compensated? That is the percentage of permanent incapacity, does not apply.
Okay.
Hello, my question is,
I've been told, kindly repeat and be audible.
my question is, you have a staff
Yes.
who was injured, and then when you are doing the
Yes.
filing of the DOSH 2, that is the part for the medical reports. The doctor gave a report that
DOSH 1 part 2.
yes, the percentage of incapacity does not apply. Does that mean that the staff or the one who was injured will not be compensated? He has got nothing to benefit.
Okay. The time aliumia, alikuwa na kuja kazini? Hapana.
Hakuwa anakuja.
Alikaa for how many days out of work?
14 days. 14 days.
14 days.
Yes.
Aya, that one is sana sana when it comes to calculation, what usually guide us, it is what the doctor has said. You get? We usually look at what the doctors have said and also the salary. You get? So kama huyu daktari aliona it is not permanent, akapewa number of days, usually use the number of days. You remember hiyo ya when you said number of days times 26, you remember there were two formulas for permanent capacity and for number of days. So we'll use for number of days. Na kama alikuwa nyumbani na alikuwa analipwa, si alikuwa analipwa mshahara?
Yeah.
Alikuwa analipwa mshahara, si ndio? Kuna pesa yoyote alijilipia kutoka kwa mfuko yake ya medical expenses?
No, it is the insurance, the medical insurance that footed the bill.
That yes, si ndio?
Yeah.
So hakuna hapo, what happens like now an employer, what will do, tuseme an example, mimi nimeumia, nimeenda kazini, nimeumia, niko off, but mshahara wangu inaingianga, unaona? And then wakaketa pia ma medical expenses, hata transport, unaona? So what will happen, tutado that calculation. Sababu huyu employer amekuwa akilipa premiums to the insurance firm. So tutafanya calculation and then after that tunapeleka kwa yeye ndo anapeleka kwa insurer so that the employer can claim that money. We are together?
Yeah.
That's what happens. Sababu remember huyu mfanyikazi amekuwa nyumbani na amekuwa akilipwa mshahara. Unaona? So that's where we come in. Sisi tunafanya nini? Do the calculation. Alafu tunaonesha huyu anakuja na payslip as a evidence. Huyu alikuwa nyumbani na amekuwa akilipwa mshahara. Sasa hiyo tunafanya calculation yake. The employer anapeleka kwa insurer wake. Insurer wake anaenda kuclaim that money because alilipa nini? Premiums huko.
Yeah.
That's what happens. But hii ya percentage, you'll see if he was given a percentage, kangepewa percentage, that is permanent capacity. Permanent capacity inamaanisha alilose any part of his body. Sasa hiyo pesa tuguzangi, hiyo tunapatiananga huo waka at the end of the day. We are together up to there.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. We have another question from Grace. She's asking, is it a must to have a GPA cover to get payment through WIBA in case of an accident outside workplace?
Okay. Yes. By the way, about this group personal cover, what happens, ina depend na venye mfanyikazi, how is the question? Okay, let me read the question. Is it a must to have a GPA cover to get payment through WIBA in case an accident outside work or place? GPA, sisi tunajali na zile accidents that have occurred within or out of work. That's one hizo ndo tunafanyanga, but for GPA we never handle because that one it was outside work. Unaweza pata mfanyikazi an employer, what happens, an employer amechukulia WIBA, insurance WIBA for wafanyikazi wake na pia add extra premium for GPA in case mfanyikazi wangu umie when is out of work, he has already been covered. Unaona? Sisi tunafanyanga calculation pekee ya injuries that are work related ukiwa kazini, but hizi za GPA we never handle. Hiyo sasa unaenda direct to the insurer.
Thank you. For those who are asking for the contacts, I guess she has shared her contacts. It's my hope that you have written it somewhere. In case of further question, you can clarify with her. In case there are no further questions, I'd like to invite Mary to read us with the word of prayer so that we can close the session. Thank you.
Sorry for that interruption. Let's us pray. Our Father and our God, we come before you this evening. Say thank you for the gift of life. Say thank you for the good healthy bodies you have given us. Say thank you for this beautiful day you have given us. Thank you for your various provision. Thank you for taking care of us throughout the day, even the time we were having our training. Thank you for all participants. As we live today, Jehovah God, be together with us, protect each and every one of us. In the name of Jesus, we pray and believe. Amen. Have a good evening.
So thank you, Mary. So we can now leave at your own
Thank you for
pleasure, and
attending
thank
the
you for
training.
Now the emails.
Zilikuwaje? The train, it was oh.
Was